Welcome back to the Historical Combat Series, where we decode the most legendary personnel files of the ancient world. If you were with us in Part 2, you witnessed the ultimate comeback story. We saw Peter, our hot-headed, blue-collar tanker, survive a catastrophic system crash after completely self-destructing with his triple denial in the courtyard. He didn't get fired. Instead, he received the ultimate software update from the Supreme Founder, the Resurrection. And let's not forget that epic global launch day at Pentecost. Peter stepped right up to the mic, dropped a perfectly calculated pitch, and the spiritual startup went absolutely viral. He successfully onboarded 3,000 new users in a single afternoon, completely crashing the local religious monopolies algorithms. But let's be real for a second. Gaining a few thousand users in a localized beta test? That's just playing the tutorial phase. It's child's play. Here is the ultimate strategic question. What happens when your underground movement scales so aggressively and so fast that it triggers the red alerts of the ultimate global monopoly? I'm talking about the final boss of the ancient world, the Roman Empire. Can a rugged, uneducated fisherman from a marginalized flyover state handle the cutthroat, heavily armed political machinery of Rome? Or is this where his server permanently shuts down? Do you honestly think dodging a few local high priests in Jerusalem was the peak of his career? Not a chance. Things are about to get incredibly dark, and the stakes have literally never been higher. So, grab your popcorn, fasten your seatbelts, and hold on to your seats, because this next chapter is definitely not for the faint of heart. Counting down. 3, R, E, the ultimate blood-soaked clash between a Galilean fisherman and the most ruthless political machine in human history officially begins right now. Chapter 1. Scaling the startup and hacking the demographics. Let's pull up the analytics for a second. After the epic Pentecost launch, the spiritual startup is absolutely booming. Daily active users are spiking, and the community in the Jerusalem server is thriving. But here is the critical bottleneck. The entire operation is still running exclusively on the Jewish server. For centuries, there had been a massive, impenetrable firewall between the Jewish people and the Gentiles, basically everyone else. It was essentially a closed beta test. But if this movement was ever going to reach unicorn status and disrupt the global order, Peter had to scale the organization. He needed to hack the demographics. Enter the Cornelius beta test. Cornelius wasn't just a random NPC. He was a Roman centurion. In modern corporate terms, he was a mid-level executive in the military machinery of the enemy monopoly, the very empire occupying Peter's homeland. To prep his lead CEO for this massive shift, the Supreme Founder sends Peter a cloud-based vision. Peter sees a sheet coming down from heaven filled with all kinds of animals that his traditional Jewish operating system considered unclean or malware. A voice tells him to get up, kill, and eat. Peter, still running on legacy code, refuse. But then the ultimate system override drops in the book of Acts 10:15. Do not call anything impure that God has made clean. This vision completely hacks Peter's traditional API. He realizes that the old exclusionary algorithms are officially obsolete. The founder is pushing a massive software update that makes the product available to everyone, regardless of their IP address. Peter travels to the coastal city of Caesarea. Standing in the living room of a Roman officer, Peter officially drops the geopolitical firewall. He pitches the message. And to everyone's absolute shock, the Holy Spirit downloads directly into Cornelius and his entire household. Peter is stunned. He logs this paradigm shift in Acts 10:34-35. I now realize how true it is that God does not show favoritism, but accepts from every nation the one who fears him and does what is right. Peter immediately baptizes them, officially onboarding the very first Gentile users. The global launch is a go. But, as anyone in corporate management knows, when you execute a massive, unauthorized pivot without consulting the board of directors, there will be pushback. When Peter gets back to the Jerusalem headquarters, the conservative board, the circumcised believers, are completely freaking out. They corner him. You went into the house of uncircumcised men and ate with them? You are sharing our proprietary code with the Romans. Peter doesn't panic. He doesn't pull out a sword to engage in PvP combat like he did in Gethsemane. Instead, he calmly presents the data. He walks them through the vision, the beta test, and the undeniable results of the Holy Spirit's descent. And then, he drops the ultimate, unarguable logic found in Acts 11:17. So if God gave them the same gift he gave us who believed in the Lord Jesus Christ, who was I to think that I could stand in God's way? Boom! The board is completely silenced. The system update is officially approved. And the demographic firewall is permanently dismantled. The user base is now expanding globally without limits. The startup is thriving, breaking through borders, cultures, and centuries-old prejudices. Peter has successfully scaled the operation beyond anyone's wildest dreams. But remember the golden rule of business. When you disrupt the market this aggressively, the mid-game bosses start paying attention. And one of the local franchise managers of the Roman Empire is about to initiate a permanent account deletion protocol for the core team. Things are about to get bloody. All of that is coming up in Chapter 2. Chapter 2. The Mid-Game Boss and the Ultimate Server Jailbreak. If you know anything about business, you know that when your startup scales aggressively and disrupts the market, the mid-game bosses start paying attention. And they do not play nice. Enter King Herod Agrippa. In modern corporate terms, Herod was essentially the regional franchise manager for the Roman Empire. His entire political career depended on maintaining a high approval rating with the local religious elite in Jerusalem. Seeing that the new spiritual startup was causing a massive disruption to his market, Herod decided it was time to boost his KPIs with a brutal crackdown. He initiated a permanent account deletion protocol. The first casualty was devastating. Herod ordered the execution of James, one of the original core team members. This wasn't just a PR crisis. This was a literal game over for a C-suite executive. Seeing that this execution caused a massive spike in his approval ratings with the elite, Herod immediately went after the ultimate prize. He ordered the arrest of the lead CEO, Peter. Herod wasn't taking any chances. He locked Peter inside what was essentially a first-century maximum security server. We are talking about an impossible dungeon level. Peter was placed in an inner cell, literally chained between two heavily armed guards, with 4 squads of soldiers guarding the doors. Physically, Peter's HP didn't matter anymore. His tanker stats were completely useless. The mathematical probability of him escaping this lockdown was an absolute 0. He was scheduled to be executed publicly right after the Passover. But Herod severely underestimated the tech support of this spiritual movement. While Peter was asleep, waiting for his execution. The entire community logged on and ran a 24/7 cloud-based prayer campaign. And right in the middle of the night, the Supreme Founder dropped a literal admin override. An angel suddenly appeared in the cell, completely hacking the Roman mainframe. A bright light flooded the room. But the guards didn't even flinch. They went completely away from keyboard, locked in a deep, supernatural sleep. The angel tapped Peter on the side, woke him up, and simply said, "Quick, get up." At that exact millisecond, the heavy iron chains literally fell off Peter's wrists. The angel told him to put on his shoes and wrap his cloak around him. Peter was so groggy and stunned by this system glitch that he thought he was wearing a VR headset. He thought he was having a vision. He followed the angel right past the first guard post. Then, the second guard post. Nobody moved. Finally, they reached the massive outer iron gate leading to the city. And without anyone touching it, the heavy gate opened autonomously, like the automatic sliding doors at a modern supermarket. Peter walked out into the dark streets, a completely free man. The angel disappeared, and Peter finally realized his operating system wasn't dreaming. He had just experienced the ultimate server jailbreak. He left King Herod's flawless security system in absolute shambles. The local crackdown had officially failed. Peter survived, and the startup continued to thrive despite the intense hostility. But let's look at the grand strategy here. Surviving a mid-game boss is great, but the Galilee and Jerusalem maps are now way too small. If this spiritual empire is truly going to take over the world, the tanker has to relocate his headquarters. He has to step right into the belly of the beast, Rome. And the ultimate final boss is waiting for him there. Things are about to get unbelievably dark. All of that is coming up in Chapter 3. Chapter 3. Relocating to HQ. Nero and the ultimate PR crisis. So, Peter has successfully scaled the startup. The demographic firewall is completely shattered. And the user base is growing exponentially across the Mediterranean. But if you want to truly disrupt a global monopoly, you can't just operate in the regional branches. You have to take the fight to the main stage. Peter decides to relocate the spiritual startup's headquarters to the absolute center of the geopolitical map, Rome. Think about this for a second. Moving to Rome wasn't just a bold business move. It was a suicide mission. This was the belly of the beast. Peter is essentially a wanted man running an unauthorized, disruptive enterprise right under the nose of the Roman emperor. He has to operate completely underground, building his community in the shadows, quietly hacking the local culture while avoiding the detection of the empire's massive surveillance algorithms. And then, the final boss enters the chat. Meet Emperor Nero. If we are pulling up his stat sheet, Nero is the ultimate toxic CEO. He is a narcissist who inherited the biggest corporate monopoly on Earth. He has absolute, unchecked power, a highly volatile operating system, and an empathy level that sits at absolute zero. Nero cares more about his own aesthetic, his poetry, and his extravagant lifestyle than he does about governing the empire. In the summer of 64 AD, the capital server experiences a catastrophic system crash, the Great Fire of Rome. A massive inferno sweeps through the city, burning for days and completely leveling a huge chunk of Rome. The citizens are left homeless, starving, and absolutely furious. And in the ancient world, When the public gets angry, rumors go viral faster than a trending hashtag. The word on the street is that Nero himself started the fire just to clear some prime real estate so he could build his new aesthetic golden palace. Nero's approval ratings don't just dip, they hit rock bottom. He is facing the ultimate first-century version of cancel culture, and a full-blown public riot is brewing. To dodge this massive PR crisis and save his own skin, Nero desperately needs a scapegoat. He needs someone to take the blame. He scans the city and points his finger at the weird, secretive, fast-growing underground startup, the Christians. Audience activation cue. Now. Brace yourselves. Drop the corporate metaphors for a second. Because what happens next is not a joke. This isn't getting canceled on Twitter or losing your sponsors. This is first-century Roman cancellation. Nero initiates a literal bloodbath. The Roman server turns unbelievably toxic, and the survival rate of the Christian community plunges to zero. Believers are hunted down in the streets. They are thrown into the arena with wild beasts for public entertainment. And in a move of pure psychopathic cruelty, Nero actually orders Christians to be covered in pitch and set on fire, using them as human torches to light up his private garden parties. It is a massacre. The startup is facing complete and total annihilation. The underground community is absolutely terrified. They look at Peter, or their lead co-founder, and they realize a harsh strategic truth. If the CEO dies, the entire movement dies with him. They beg Peter to log off, to flee the city immediately, and to save himself so he can keep the servers running from a safe distance. Driven by the basic human instinct to survive, Peter agrees. He packs his bags, turns his back on Rome, and runs. The ultimate tanker is finally backing down from the fight. But hold on to your seats, because right as he is sneaking out of the city along the Appian Way under the cover of darkness, Peter is about to experience a cognitive glitch that will alter the course of human history forever. A figure is walking toward him in the night. What happens on that road? All of that will be exposed in Chapter 4. Chapter 4. The Quo Vadis Glitch and the Final Override. So, there he is, the lead co-founder. The ultimate tanker of the movement has officially decided to hit the log off button. Let's set the scene. It's the middle of the night. Peter is sneaking out of the capital along the Appian Way, the ancient cobblestone superhighway leading out of Rome. Behind him, the sky is glowing an eerie orange from the fires of Nero's madness. The Roman server has become a literal meat grinder, and Peter is retreating. You could argue this was a calculated business move. The community begged him to leave, telling him that the startup needed its CEO alive to function remotely. But let's be brutally honest. Underneath that strategic excuse, Peter's basic human flight response had taken over. The fear algorithm that crashed his system back in the courtyard during his triple denial was creeping back into his code. He was running for his life. But just as he thinks he has successfully escaped the danger zone, he experiences the ultimate glitch in the Matrix. Through the thick, smoky mist of the Appian Way, Peter sees a figure walking toward him. But this figure isn't fleeing the city like everyone else. This person is walking in the exact opposite direction, heading straight into the burning, blood-soaked epicenter of Nero's Rome. As the figure gets closer, Peter freezes. His heart stops. It's the supreme founder. It's Jesus. According to ancient historical tradition, A completely stunned Peter falls to his knees and asks a question that would echo through eternity. Quo vadis? Domine? Lord, where are you going? Jesus looks down at his broken CEO and drops a single sentence that completely shatters Peter's reality. He replies, I am going to Rome to be crucified again. Audience activation cue. Pause for a second and feel the sheer weight of those words. This wasn't just a simple conversation. This was a fatal error injected straight into Peter's fear algorithm. In modern corporate terms, Jesus didn't yell at him. He didn't fire him for abandoning the team. He delivered the ultimate. Devastating guilt trip combined with the final software patch Peter would ever need. Jesus was essentially saying, if my lead executive is going to abandon the flock to the wolves, then I, the founder, will have to go back and tank the damage myself. That one sentence triggered a total cognitive reboot. All the legacy code of cowardice. All the imposter syndrome that Peter had carried since his days as a blue-collar fisherman in Galilee, it was all permanently deleted from his hard drive. He finally understood the ultimate rule of true leadership. A real tanker doesn't manage the crisis from a safe, offshore account. A real tanker stands on the front line and absorbs the damage for his team. Soft landing and hard hook, Peter doesn't say another word. He doesn't run anymore. The panic completely drains from his face. Replaced by an absolute, unbreakable resolve, the rock is finally, truly solidified. He turns his back on safety, walking straight back into the heart of the Roman execution machinery. But if you think his final penalty is going to be a standard, textbook execution, you clearly don't know, Peter. When the Empire finally catches him, he is going to make a final request that completely defies gravity and breaks all Roman logic. The ultimate flex of humility is waiting. All of that will be exposed in Chapter 5. Chapter 5. The Upside-Down Cross. Defying gravity and logic. So, Peter stops running. The ultimate flight response is permanently disabled. He turns around and walks right back into the ultimate kill box, the burning city of Rome. This time, there is no cloud-based admin override. There are no angels dropping from the sky to hack the Roman mainframe, put the guards to sleep, or autonomously open the iron gates like they did back in Jerusalem. Peter is officially captured by Nero's heavily armed security forces. The tanker has willingly surrendered his HP to the system. His trial is swift, brutal, and the verdict is absolute: death by crucifixion at the Circus of Nero, right on the dusty slopes of Vatican Hill. Now, let's talk about crucifixion for a second. In the first century Roman server, this wasn't just a standard execution method, it was the ultimate psychological weapon. It was designed to publicly humiliate, torture, and completely erase a person's dignity before they logged off from the world. It was the monopoly's way of broadcasting a terrifying message. This is what happens when you introduce an unauthorized bug into our system. When Peter is led to the execution site, he looks at the heavy wooden cross. The guards are ready to nail him up just like they did to thousands of other rebels. But instead of begging for mercy or panicking, Peter submits a bizarre, mind-blowing final request to his executioners. He demands to be crucified upside down. Pause and let that sink in. Why would anyone ask to make the most agonizing death in human history even worse? Because this rugged, uneducated blue-collar fisherman, after all his impulsive PvP combat, his catastrophic triple denial by the charcoal fire, and his epic resurrection reboot takes one last look at his own track record. He realizes that despite his C-suite title as The Rock, he is completely unworthy to die in the exact same posture as his supreme founder, Jesus. The Roman executioners, likely baffled by this bizarre user request, actually comply. They nail him to the timber and hoist the cross upside down. It is a brutal, agonizing, logic-defying execution. Blood rushes to his head, accelerating his suffocation. Gravity is completely weaponized against him. But think about the cinematic weight of this moment. It is a literal visual glitch in the Roman operating system. A man hanging upside down, physically destroyed, yet completely unbreakable in spirit. He isn't screaming in defeat. He is embracing his final mission. The Roman Empire successfully liquidated his physical avatar. But they couldn't touch his loyalty. Soft landing and hard hook. The ultimate tanker took his final breath on Vatican Hill. Emperor Nero sat back in his extravagant, aesthetic palace, thinking he had successfully initiated a permanent account deletion for the lead CEO of this disruptive startup. He thought he had scrubbed the server clean. But hold on. Nero, with all his absolute military might, fundamentally misunderstood how the code of this spiritual movement was written. Killing the founder didn't shut down the servers. It was the ultimate marketing campaign. It made the movement go viral for eternity. You think the Roman Empire won this historical combat? Wait until you see the final ROI 000 years later. Let's pull up the final scoreboard. It's been 2,000 years since that upside-down execution. So let's look at the long-term analytics. Where is the mighty Roman Empire today? The ultimate global monopoly that thought they owned the entire server. Today, it's completely decentralized, mostly just a pile of aesthetic ruins, where tourists take selfies and buy overpriced gelato. And Emperor Nero, the final boss who initiated the permanent account deletion of our lead CEO, history remembers him as nothing more than a highly toxic, lunatic tyrant whose empire crashed in flames. But what about Peter? What happened to the uneducated, hot-headed, blue-collar fisherman from the overlooked flyover server of Galilee? Look at the ultimate ROI. Right, exactly on the spot where he was crucified, upside down Vatican Hill now stands St. Peter's Basilica. It is the monumental, literal, spiritual epicenter for billions of active daily users worldwide. The Romans thought burying him would delete the movement, but they didn't realize they were just planting a seed. Before we officially log off from this series, let's talk about the real takeaway here. Why does this ancient personnel file matter to you right now? Because Peter's legacy is the ultimate proof that your starting point does not dictate your endgame. You might be grinding in an exhausting 9-to-5, dealing with massive imposter syndrome, or feeling like you completely crashed your own system with past mistakes. Remember, Peter failed. He panicked. He threw a fatal error 404 and denied his founder 3 times in the darkest moment of his life. But the beauty of Peter's story is that he didn't rage quit. He didn't let his failures define his profile. He accepted the ultimate grace patch, rebooted his system, and stepped back into the arena. He took his raw, unpolished, imperfect grit and allowed the supreme founder to turn it into a rock-solid foundation that outlasted the greatest military machine on Earth. He started with an empty fishing net and ended up catching the entire world. That my friends, is the ultimate historical combat victory. If you enjoyed this epic series and took something valuable away from it, hit that like button. Drop a comment below. And subscribe so you never miss our next deep dive into history's greatest personnel files. Until next time, keep fighting. Stay resilient. And we'll see you soon.